Hello, welcome everyone. It is wonderful to have you all here tonight. So, we have a very special guest here. Crystal, I think you're our third person actually in this series. We're doing the Inspiring Money Stories series, where we're actually talking to different women in business, some coaches, got a couple of healers lined up. And what I'm really wanting to establish with these conversations is how women have gone through challenging times with money and how they have used intuition and mindset and manifestation and all sorts of other things to get themselves out of that situation and come to a different understanding, a different perspective, and even a different situation with money. And I think what we're really aiming to do is to show other women who might be in that place right now that what's possible, and it's not just me banging the drum here for manifestation and money mindset. Actually, there are people, bless you, there are people out there in real life all over the world who are using these practices and changing their lives. So
Yeah.
welcome, Crystal. It is so amazing to have you here tonight. And for those of you who don't know, for those people out there who don't know your work yet, do you want to maybe, do a little bit of an intro and tell people what you do?
Yeah, for sure. So I do parenting coaching. You can probably see my name. I started out, actually, I found this work through my own kind of journey, my own transformation, which I think a lot of us do. My own struggles with my kiddos who several of them are neurodiverse, and I had a really hard time parenting them. I had this idea of how I wanted to parent in my mind. I knew about conscious parenting, attachment, connection, gentle parenting, if you know any of those terminologies. And I loved it. But I found that it was super difficult. And I thought that it was super difficult because of my kids, because I just had really hard kids. Turns out that I had a lot more of a role to play in it than I was realizing. And as I started to notice that and get kind of introspective and change things for me, and my parenting changed, I noticed that my kids changed and their behavior changed like hugely, like 95%. And I wasn't doing like ABA, behavioral therapy, medication, intensive, crazy kinds of alternative therapies that lots of people do when they are in that mode. And I was like, how is this working so well? This is like crazy. So anyways, things were going really well. I stumbled across life coaching when I was looking for a master's program in psychology, always kind of knowing I would do some sort of mental health. And it just felt like such a good fit. And so I initially started kind of coaching everybody on everything. And more and more and more was like parenting coaching is it's just what I love. And it's really less about parenting coaching and more about inner healing and intuition and manifestation and all the things we're going to talk about today. And
Fantastic.
parenting really is like the result of those things. So,
Oh,
yeah.
I love that. I love that. And I'd love to ask you a little bit later on as well about what your thoughts are around manifestation and relationships as well, because a lot of what we're talking about is relationships here. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, definitely. Definitely. Oh, that is so interesting. And I think it's funny, isn't it? Or not. Maybe it's obvious actually when you look back at, how we're just attracted to those areas that we end up maybe having a struggle with. And,
Yeah.
we end up coaching or working or doing therapy in those areas because we're often trying to help ourselves, aren't we, in the
Yeah.
process?
I remember learning about my favorite mentors. One of them is Brene Brown, and reading about her and just thinking she's just so smart and she has so much to say about shame, and I love it. And it's because she struggled with shame so much. And I think I thought the
Mm,
opposite was true. Like it's people that are just naturally good at what they do that share. And I just think I would never be able to relate to my people. I would never be able to help people in the depth of the way that I am able to if it hadn't been my deepest struggle for my whole life,
yeah.
right? For like,
Yeah.
so I've been parenting now for 16 years. My oldest is 16. And so many of those years, like 12 plus of those years, were really tough. And and I really think it's the thing that we often struggle most with and have to figure out, that we're like, then choose to spread the word and spread the healing and help people with, because we just feel so called to that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I definitely want to talk a lot about your money story, but I know that a lot of people actually really struggle with relationships. And I know that you're talking in the context of parenting. So I
Mhm.
wonder whether it's in the context of parenting or whether it's in the context of romantic or kind of spouse and partners, or whether it's general family and their limiting
Mhm.
beliefs or their kind of thoughts about what you should and shouldn't be doing. What are your thoughts around manifestation and relationships? Because you mentioned that your kids' behavior changed. like
Mhm.
95%, and you were just
Yeah.
working on yourself. So, and that was related to intuition and manifestation. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's fascinating. I actually help people with all relationships. I call myself a parenting coach, but really, it's all relationships are connected and related, right? So most couples or individuals that come to me need support both in their partner relationships and with their kids and with their relationship with themselves, which is kind of what all this boils down to. So manifestation for me is creating what it is that I want in life. And so when
Mm,
I think of when I first saw you looking for people to interview, and I just thought, okay, do I have a story to share? And I feel like my story is pretty different because the focus isn't so much on money. My
mm,
focus was trying to create the life of my dreams. And money has a role to play in that, but success isn't just physical wealth, right? And so for me, I
yes.
thought that means luxurious relationships and that means luxurious time. And so for me,
Mhm.
luxurious relationships looks like having so much connection and intimacy and love in my relationships with people and both my friends and my family. And so I think that's how manifestation comes in is we're trying to create this life of our dreams in every area of our life, not just in wealth. And as we focus on what would an amazing relationship with my partner look like, or with my children, or with my family or friends, and how can I create that? I think that it's like all manifestation work, right? So,
Mm,
yeah, I think that's how it's connected.
nice. So if there's someone out there at the moment who is going through this struggle at the moment, and I've coached quite a few people around this topic recently, I know it's quite a common theme.
Mhm.
So if they are struggling with a particular relationship and they're looking to manifest, a certain change in their life, and there's struggle and conflict and tension, what would
Mhm.
you say to them? What's maybe your top tip or a couple of like pieces of advice that you could give in that situation?
Yeah, so I think with relationships, everything boils down to ourself. So if you look at like my relationship with my partner, my relationship with my best friend, and with my mom, and with, everyone around me, the common denominator is me. So I oftentimes we want to change the other person, and that doesn't work very well. So the goal is to kind of drop trying to change them. And what I've noticed is that our influence increases exponentially, like almost at the same rate as we drop trying to control and change others. So
Mm,
we actually influence everybody around us when we stop trying to influence them, or at least trying to control them, stop trying to control them. So
mm,
a lot of it is like expectations. Like, what do I expect from my partner when they come home from work and I come home from work? And like, what dynamic do I expect there? Um, what do I expect from my kids? And I think even deeper than that is how it relates back to myself. So I coach almost all on triggers. Triggers is a strong emotional activation, a strong emotional charge in my body. And when that is happening in my body, there's a reason behind it. And a lot of that reason has to do with usually it's rooted in shame. Usually there's some sort of connection to shame, which means I'm making it mean something about myself. So it's all filtered through this concept, this self concept. And that was developed from the ages of 0 to 7. And that all had to do with specifically our primary attachments. So, who were the attachments in my life? How did they respond to me? How did I see them respond to other people? What beliefs did I create during that time because of how I was responded to? And even though we might not consciously notice that those are affecting us, subconsciously they're affecting us a lot. And so a lot of relationship work is actually self work. It's actually
mm.
noticing like what have I brought from childhood, which is why I say yes, it is parenting coaching, but really that's like the very last step. Like that's 5% of what we do.
Yeah.
Most of what we do is uncovering these subconscious beliefs that have been passed down to us that we've had, these triggers and what's happening in our body, and then kind of working on them simultaneously through like thoughts and belief work, but then also through like body and somatic work, which is, I think, how you process things like shame and triggers.
Mm, mm. Interesting. That is absolutely fascinating. So I love your quote just there. Your influence increases exponentially when we stop trying to control the other person. That is
Hmm.
just that's everything there, really, isn't it?
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So drop that, and then we get to have more influence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was totally the story with my kids where I was like, wait, I have been trying to get them to do this for years.
Mm,
How is this happening when I stopped trying to change them? And I've seen that time and time and again with my clients and in other relationships in my life too, where I'm just like, they can just be them And like, how do I want to show up in this relationship? And how can I
Mm.
manifest that or intentionally create that in my side of the relationship?
Yeah.
Because the relationship is like a dance. And so if we're constantly doing like the waltz together, and then I'm like, I don't want to do the waltz anymore, I want to do the polka,
Mm.
they have to shift, right?
Hmm.
Because we've been in the same pattern, these same habits forever. And that is going to shift, even if I'm not trying to make it happen. So um, I think everything boils down to connection, attachment, relationships. And I think so much of that has to do with manifestation, right? What do
Yeah,
I want to create and how do I show up in the world right now, today, even if I don't have the relationship of my dreams that I want to? How would
completely.
I create, or how would I show up today, even though I haven't created that yet?
Exactly, exactly. I love that. Yeah. And I love what you were talking about before as well with like the material wealth. And I saw a really great distinction the other day between, the idea of being rich and the idea of being wealthy. And, the idea of being
Mhm.
rich, being that material kind of abundance, you've got the money maybe in the bank account
Mhm.
or your investments or whatever it might be. Whereas the wealth is exactly what you're talking about. It's that time, it's that love, it's that energy, it's that level of health, and it's the wealth that allows you to have the
Mhm.
freedom to do the things that you want to do without too much financial stress and all of that. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I
it's
also
great to
have to
remember
say,
that.
like, when I say that I created the life of my dreams, I literally is of my dreams, because I don't think anybody else necessarily has the same dream that I do. I think we all have different dreams, but
Yeah.
for like as long as I can remember, even when I was little, I always wanted to travel. And
Mm,
we grew up in a very I don't want to say very poor household, because I'm sure that there's people that were much much more poor than we were, but we definitely were not well off.
mm,
And I always felt like there wasn't enough, and we did not travel. Um,
mm,
and I always wanted to. So I become an adult and I start traveling and make that something that is really important to me. I get married, and my husband's not as interested in traveling as I am. And I'm kind of like getting him in there, and eventually he's kind of liking it more. But I kind of always had this idea of wanting to travel the world with my family.
mm.
And it's just been this like persistent dream forever. And I've always told people, like, I'm going to do this eventually. And my husband works online now from home, and we kind of manifested that whole thing also. And now we both do travel and homeschool and like all the things that I've wanted forever.
Yeah.
Not just in material wealth, but also in like, how do I spend my time, experiences
Mm,
that I want to have, what relationships do I have with people, like just in every aspect.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So maybe it's nice to start there. Like, what if we were to start at the now? Paint
Mhm.
us a picture of how your life is now in terms of your business and your family and your travel.
Mhm.
What does that look like?
So far we've been traveling pretty slowly. So we'll just like rent somebody's Airbnb, or right now we're renting a house from somebody who's just gone temporarily. And even those situations literally just happened. We just kind of put it out into the universe, like, we're going to do this. And we get a phone call with someone who's like, hey, we have this house on Vancouver Island and we need some help renovating it. And we don't get a lot of people over the winter. Like, we heard you guys want to move around. Anyway, so we start there. We're there. Our time is almost up. These people that we're living in their house of right now call us too. We heard about you from our kids, and they know you, and they said you move around a bunch. Anyways, it's just keeps happening like that.
Hmm.
And so now it's been kind of slow, but in the fall, for the whole next school year, we're going to be traveling around Europe and Southeast Asia. So it's going to be a lot faster. We're going to do a lot more countries
Amazing.
because my oldest son, it'll be his last year at home. And so we wanted to do kind of like an international trip before he leaves. So right now I work 10-ish hours a week, sometimes up to 15 if I have like a big launch happening, but
Hmm.
never more than that. My husband probably works like 30 hours a week. We have time to volunteer. We have lots of time to spend with our kids. We live at the base of a mountain range right now at national park. So we hike often, paddleboard, kayak. I spend lots of time outdoors. I meditate every day. I spend a lot of time just doing whatever I want to do, whatever that looks like each day.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
love the abundance of time that my life feels like it has in being able to take trips or stay home or just do whatever I want for the day.
Hmm.
I homeschool my kiddos. We're on our 11th year of that. And I feel like my relationships are really solid. My one son that has high functioning autism is just so solid, like really good at emotional regulation, at confidence, at looking people in the eyes when he talks to them. Like just so many differences that years ago I probably wasn't sure if they would ever happen.
Mm.
And which gives me hope for my other little kiddos that are still in the challenging phases right now, that those things do come as I, just wait and just hold that space for them to developmentally grow into who they are. And yeah, I don't know. Is that everything? Did I mention everything?
Yeah, it sounds, I think you've painted a really good picture. So you're basically, you're traveling a lot, you're
Mhm.
moving around, you go from different locations, sometimes you get Airbnb, sometimes you get different offers. You've got lots of nature in your day, you're
Mhm.
hiking, you're paddleboarding, you're meditating, you've got an abundance of time, you're homeschooling. So you're homeschooling 3 kids as well, are you?
4. Mhm.
4. Wow, okay.
Yeah.
I'm curious about that, just as a little aside. Like, how do you find time to homeschool 4 kids and work 10 hours a week and have an abundance of time? I guess, like, my brain doesn't compute. Like, how do
You're
you
like,
do
"How do all
that?
those" and people are always like, "How do you do that all? You must be so
Yeah.
productive." And I'm like, "I think it's 'cause I've really unlearned a lot of things about society."
Right.
One of them has been education.
Mm,
What do I believe learning looks like? How do I believe it happens in an optimal environment? What is my role in my children's education, and as their homeschool mom? And I've done that in lots of areas, including productivity and scheduling. And pretty much every journey that I've ever gone through in my life has gone the same way, and including business. And it's I live life in a masculine energy way. So if you know masculine and feminine energy, not like male,
mm,
female, but I live life in this masculine energy way where I'm really focused on schedules and productivity and structures, and like everything is so that's
mm,
what I
mm,
am naturally. And then I start to question, why am I doing this? I feel burnt out or overwhelmed or stressed out, or it's not working or whatever. And I start moving all the way over to this feminine energy, which is intuition and flow and emotion and connection. And everything works out. So I've done the same
mm,
thing with my business that I really did with homeschooling, and homeschooling was my first journey into this, where I was like, this is not working. And it for sure was not working. For the first 3 or 4 years, we were just butting heads. I kept them home because I wanted to build my relationship with them. I didn't even
mm,
keep them home for education purposes. I was just wanting to spend more time so I could build this relationship that I knew wasn't great.
mhm.
Newsflash, that doesn't work. Spending more time with somebody that you're not getting along with does not help super well.
Right.
So we're both home and just spending more time together so we can agitate each other even more. So
Yep.
homeschooling was kind of my first journey in like, wait a second, like, why do I think it has to be this way? And I had an amazing facilitator in Canada. We have facilitators here that kind of help us with homeschooling, who was like, maybe you should like push them less. Like maybe you should just like follow their own interests. And I was like, wait, what? Like, how do we get anything
Mhm,
done? And
mhm,
like all my journeys, I realized that like letting go of my expectations and releasing what it looks like was actually how to make education blossom. And
mm,
my kids are amazing. I could do a whole episode on the amazing accomplishments that my children have done, because I stopped trying to push them, because I
mm,
stopped trying to make them be a certain way, fit a certain mold. I have a child who started learning to read at 4 and a child who started learning to read at 10. And
mhm.
during those years of like, is this going to work? Are my kids going to be illiterate? Like, and just allowing their development to happen naturally, I really worried how that was going to turn
Mm,
out. But, by 11, he'd read the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And I was like, okay, it works.
amazing.
I just need to wait
Amazing.
for them to be like, prepared. Um, so how it works now, in answer to your question, is that because it's so much more loose and so much more flowy, the structure is much smaller. So I have like 3 days
Mm,
a week, this time where we get together and I teach them whatever it is that I'm interested. I read to them, I answer their questions. I help them write down and set goals. I help them find mentors. I'm really good at hiring other people that are not me, which is
yeah.
great because I have 3 out of my 4 kids love engineering, and science is like so far from my brain expertise. So I find them tutors, I find them mentors, I find them amazing online classes. I get other people to support them in the things that I'm not great at. And I help them in the ways that I am great at, which is believing in them and helping them set up, goals and schedules and stuff like that. And so it feels like we have an abundance of time because so much of it is them doing their own thing, self-directed learning, and me just helping kind of come here and there. Like, what are you working on? How is it going? How are, if you want to do this at the end of your life? I have a child who wants to be a quantum physicist.
Wow.
and which is bizarre.
That's
And
very
he's doing
cool. Yeah.
very cool. But the choices he's making don't necessarily lead to this, right? So my goal is
Mm,
just to say, hey, I know this is what you want to do, but did you know you actually need to know a lot of math? And
mm,
we're a little bit behind in the math area. So what do you think we could do? And what kind of programs do you think you'd be interested in? How can I encourage him to kind of get there, knowing that that's what he wants to be? So really, you just have to be a good coach. Then
Yeah,
you
I
can
was going to say
homeschool them.
actually, it's your coaching skills must come in so handy. And how lucky are your
Mhm.
kids to, have, the coach as a parent as well, being able to help with goals and like connecting the dots between where you want to get to eventually. And yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
incredible. So I think, where my brain goes when I hear you work 10 hours a week, you have an
Mhm.
abundance of time, you're doing nature walks, you're
Mhm.
meditating, and you're homeschooling 4 kids. It's like, actually you're not taking on that physical workload yourself, you're outsourcing a
Mhm.
lot, you've got a team, you're finding
Mhm.
great people to coordinate and
Well, and
facilitate
even
that.
just allowing them their own selves, like we have this really great
Yeah.
garage right now, and my kids love to build, and they'll spend hours during the day just building. And they find YouTube videos, they design things, they plan things. They'll ask my husband for help with things. I don't really help them with their building projects, but like they're still learning and they're still getting things done. I'll help them find like a science fair that they can apply to so they can show off the cool things they're doing.
Mm.
So as far as like me time that happens throughout the week in homeschooling, it's pretty minimal. It's like 5 to 10 hours a week that I'm just like helping, supporting them. Some kids more than others, sometimes more than others. And it's also really seasonal. Like we do education year round. It's more of like this is our life journey. We don't just like stop and start certain
Yeah.
dates.
Yeah.
But things change for sure throughout the year. So it kind of ebbs and flows what people need help and support with. But I
Mm.
just kind of find myself as like kind of like a mentor or a guide. And do I do some of the instruction? Yes. If I'm like, okay, wait, we're actually kind of behind on grammar. I just noticed this about geography actually the other day. One of my kids said something like Toronto, and he thought Toronto was a province and Ontario was the city. And I was like, this is Canadian geography. We at least need to know our own country.
Yeah.
So I just spent the next month finding like fun quizzes online and little maps and like watching videos. And we got books out and we just kind of went all in on geography. We did the same thing on like anti-racism during Black History Month. And like, I'll just kind
Mm.
of figure out what I think is important and interesting and kind of just pull resources together to do it. And so I think the answer is the reason it works is because it's like flowy. It's just not
Yeah.
structured anymore.
Yeah, it sounds like you're really being led by what they need and what is current and what's important at that moment. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. And it sounds like you did a lot of that to get to where you are now with your business because, you're painting this amazing picture, working 10 to 15 hours a week,
Mhm.
lots of time for your family, loads of time for yourself and for nature and what's important to you. So, if we rewind, I don't know how far back we need to go, but what was it like before for you in your business?
Yeah. So homeschooling really was my first journey in this, like, I didn't know what to call it before. I didn't know I was shifting from masculine to feminine energy because I didn't know
Mm.
what that was. And homeschooling is what got me into life coaching actually, because I read this whole philosophy called leadership education, where you do mentor your children. Like you are inspiring them, you're leading them, you're guiding them, and you're creating an educational environment in which they thrive. And so that is what I did. And I thought at that moment, I was like, I have no idea what I'm interested in. Like, I don't spend any time for myself. I was overwhelmed. I was pretty much always nursing or pregnant or both for 12 years
Mm.
and nursed my last till she was 3. So this was like a long process. So I'm just like constantly tired and overwhelmed. And so when I read this book, I'm like, I have no idea. Like, what am I supposed to do? So I remembered that I used to love psychology and that was kind of always my path was like, eventually one day when I don't have kids anymore, I'll, do this. So I started reading Brene Brown because that's what you do when you are interested in like self-help and psychology.
Mhm.
And I started loving it. And the more and more that I got into it, the more I loved it and more I started seeing changes in my life and then found life coaching. And anyway, so I would not be here if it weren't for homeschooling. Homeschooling is my entry, my like gateway drug into life coaching, which seems really opposite. But anyways,
Yeah.
so a couple of years ago, I found myself, same thing in my business. I knew everything there was to know about marketing. I could not imagine somebody telling me something in marketing that I don't already know. I learned
Mm.
everything there was to know about Instagram. I figured out how to like grow my Instagram and how to use hashtags and when to post and how to use reels and all the things. I learned open rates and copy and emails and how much you should send and funnels. And like I went to all through all these courses, learned from all these mentors. I like knew it and still felt like this really isn't, I don't know if I felt burnt out or if I just felt like it didn't align. There was something not aligned. And it also felt like I was putting way too much energy and effort for way too little of a result. And there was this one January, I always set goals for the year, and my husband and I are setting our goal for the year. And at that time, I think he was like, I'm interested in website design. I think I'm going to teach myself how to build websites. Little did I know that would lead to him starting his entire own business online. And now he does that for a living. But for my goal, I kept feeling like I'm not setting a money goal this year. Like I kept setting these money goals. I wouldn't really reach them by the end of the year. I'd like half reach them, and I'd made money, but I didn't feel happy at the end of the year. I felt like, dang it. I said I was going to make 100K and I made 50 again, 2 years in a row. Like, what's wrong with me? I wasn't enjoying it. I wasn't feeling successful. And anyway, so fast forward, this January comes and I think, I don't want to set a money goal. I want to set a time goal. And I kept looking around me and I'm like, nobody sets time goals. People set money goals. But I just really felt like the kind of parenting that I do takes a lot of intention and effort. And I didn't want to give that up. I didn't want to be this hypocrite that's like, this is how you should do it. And I'm not even doing it because I don't have time to spend time with my kids. So I decided that my goal would be 15 hours a week. This was in January of 2022. And yes, January 2022. So I set this goal. By about June, I'd hit that goal. I'd started decreasing things. I completely changed how I did my business. I had a membership model before. I changed that. I really simplified how I was working with my clients, took on less, just really changed things around. And then by June, I thought, I think I could even get it less. I think I'm going to try 10 to 12. And by September, I was at 10 to 12 hours.
Wow.
And feeling so much less stress, so much less pressure, not focusing on the money, just really helped me like zoom out and feel happier about how things were going. So much so that in January, February, my husband was like, do you know how much money you made last year? And I was like, no idea. Usually that's my answer to him. He's like, do you know how things are going? I'm like, I don't know. He does my bookkeeping for me. So we sat down and he figured out how much I made. And we do a couple of our things together. So there's some money that I made with him as well. But the money that I just personally made in my own coaching practice was 84 or 87, I think 84,000.
Amazing.
And I was like, wait, what? Are you sure?
And so that's in the year 2022. And you set that goal originally in January that year.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I actually didn't know how much money I was making. I was just like, I'm doing a time goal, and I reached my time goal.
Yeah.
So I was blown away. I was actually like, what? How did that work? For 2 years, I'd made 50K, well, like 43 to 50-ish. And then I make this time goal and I almost double what I made in way less time.
I love that. Yeah. So basically, you went inward, you decided this is what's important. My time is the most important thing, which really actually it is. It's like our non-renewable resource, right? Like it's the most precious thing we have in our lives. And you focused on your time, which has created all that space. And then lo and behold, the money increases as well. Amazing. And it sounds like you also, from an aligned action point of view, because I always like to think of these things when we're manifesting, and it's like, you've got the things that you can do, like this is your part of the like bargain, if you like, in the 3D realm, but then the universe and the field of infinite potential, like, you can outsource all the rest of it. And so it sounds like you tweaked your business model and, you actually actively looked for ways to reduce the amount of time that you were actually spending, in your business. What else did you do in terms of aligned action, do you think, that might have helped you to receive that?
6 months before this, I'd hired an intuitive business coach, and I expected her to tell me like what to do. I even said like, well, what about my open rate? And she was like, oh no, like you did not hire me to talk about open rates. Like that's not what we do here. We do intuition. I'm like, what are you talking about? Right. So she guides me some resources about feminine and masculine energy. And that was kind of my first dive into it. And I was like, oh my goodness. And every time I listened to my intuition said, work less. Spend more time with your kids and spend more time outdoors. And I thought, I can't believe I hired this expensive business coach. And now my answer is work less in my business. I'm not making more money. So
Mm-hmm.
January comes and like, so that was 6 months after my first introduction into feminine energy and
Yeah.
intuition. And so the January thing really came to like, am I going to do this intuition thing? Am I going to listen to what my intuition is telling me? Or am I going to listen to like the business coaches that say to set a goal in this way and break it down into quarters and do the things? So aligned
Mm.
action for me was just choosing every single day, and still is this, to listen to my intuition no
Mm-hmm. I love
matter
that.
what that was, even if it went completely opposite of what like the norm is, which usually it does. So thanks, intuition. It's
Yeah.
always very uncomfortable. It's like, just, do the thing that's way out there. Um, and that's what I live by now. So it's not so much like I do the same thing every day or I set a goal or whatever. It's just what is my intuition telling me to do? And like, I have to tell you an example of this because it's just so funny. I had this bizarre idea. I've had the most creative ideas ever that are like so out there. So instead of doing Facebook ads this summer, I thought it sounded way more fun to get a bunch of candy and a bunch of balloons and a bunch of signs and go into local parades
Mm.
and put a QR code of my podcast, because that's what I'm trying to increase right now is downloads on my podcast, a
Mm-hmm.
QR code on this giant sign that people could scan from where they're sitting as I'm throwing out candy and like blasting music with balloons. So that's what I'm
Amazing.
doing. I'm starting this
Right.
weekend.
So you're
And
going
I'm
totally
like,
offline and you're going back to like, yeah, in person kind of, real
right?
life.
And like there's been
Yeah.
so many hits like this. Like I had this idea of doing a all women's retreat, self-mothering retreat and inner child healing. And the idea came to me in like a second, like where to have it, the
Mm.
price, who to have as my co-facilitators, like everything just came together. And I've had so many situations like that come where it's just like,
Mm.
do this. And I'm like, all right, that's what we're doing. Like, and it takes me
Amazing.
the most random places, like saying yes to a public speaking engagement where I was speaking to 100 engineers in the
Yeah.
US last week
Yeah.
on a
Yeah.
business trip. And I'm like, this is so like my intuition so takes me all of these places that if I had just stayed in this bubble of like, this is what I do, and this is
Mm.
what people say to do, right? You only say yes to your niche.
Yeah.
Like, I would have not spoken to this amazing engineering conference, which of course afterwards people were like, how can I connect with you? And did you know I need parenting support too? Or like, do you help with, team building or all these other things? But it's continuously leading me to some result, some connection, or not at all. And it leads me to changing, to pivoting. So twice this year,
Mm.
I've launched courses or programs that I had 0 people sign up for, like
Mhm.
actually 0. And I was like, whoa, intuition, what is
Mhm.
happening?
Mhm.
Like, you told me to do this. We
Yeah.
got 0 people. Well, we got 7 last time for this little program, and we got 0 now. And this has happened twice. So I take a couple days to like be sad and just like process and like spend time in nature, do some
Mhm.
cold plunges. And then I
Mhm.
come back and I'm like, okay, wait a second. Like, what's really happening here? And what do I need to learn? And what is like, how is this for my good? Intuition's
Mm.
always going to be for my greater good. What's the greater good from this? And there's always been an answer every time.
Mm.
And
Mm.
it usually is a pivot. It usually is some sort of a restructure in my business or changing how I do things in some way. Um, that leads to usually less time in my business and usually more time like traveling or like, anyways, it always ends up being
Yeah.
my main goal.
There's a
So
lesson
yeah.
in all of these things, and I think, that's really important, and thank you for talking about that because it sounds like an incredible, amazing transformation, doesn't it? Like going from point A where, you were earning about 50K a year, and how many hours a week on average were you working at that point as well, by the
I would
way?
say 20 minimum.
Yeah.
And probably between 20 and 25.
Right.
But if I had like a big launch or something crazy happening, I'm sure it was closer to 30 because I wasn't really keeping
Yeah.
track of like how much time I was like posting on Instagram or interacting with people there or whatever. So
Right.
I would say
Right.
20 to 30
Yeah.
and feeling like I wasn't homeschooling in the way that I wanted to and wasn't parenting in the way that I wanted to. And it wasn't like totally down the drain, but it just didn't feel aligned. And
Yes.
alignment is like the key to intuition, right? So like
Totally.
probably harder to really access those like little intuitive hits versus now everything feels aligned all the time. And I wake up in the morning, like when I went to this conference last week, I woke up that morning and I just told myself, like, I'm going to follow my intuition all day in ways I respond to people, in what I say,
Mm.
even if it means pivoting or not finishing what it is that I've prepared. I'm going to follow my intuition. I'm going to share the stories that come up, and really trying, even in like the tiny little micro moments, to access that spirit that's inside and be like, okay, like, what do I do now? And anyways, that's what I do now. So I don't know. I don't know if
Amazing.
that answers your aligned action questions, but
It really
I do
does. It
whatever
really
my
does.
intuition tells me.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to acknowledge as well. And actually, I really appreciate you sharing that as well. Like, it's not all roses. And actually, just because you get an intuitive hit to do this, it doesn't always mean that you're going to have the success that you think you're going to have. But there's always something in that. And so it could sound like an amazing transformation that just went beautifully well. You're
Yeah,
going from
it
like
did not.
20,
It
30
did
hours
not.
a week right down to 10. You're doubling your income, but it's not always that, like, smooth path and it's linear. Yeah.
There was
Yeah.
so much times of like feeling defeated, feeling discouraged. And I think it helped me get into, so I do a lot of somatic work now in my own life coaching practice. And I think that's where it came from, was the times where I was feeling discouraged and defeated and like, I can't move forward from this. I think I just want to quit my business. I've thought
Mhm.
this so many times. And then I go do some breath work or a hypnotherapy session, or I got into meditation and I do a lot of meditation now. And that has for sure changed the way that I show up, not only in life, but also in my business, and how I run my practice has changed. So, there were so many little things that like did not like at least turn out in the way
Mhm.
that I wanted them to, that I felt like was the best way. And like, why isn't working it this way? And so now I tell people, because now I teach on intuition often, and I say, first you got to figure out how it feels in your body and how intuition speaks to you. And for me, it's not always calm and peaceful and grounded. It's also the pukey yes, like I really don't want to do this, but
Mhm.
I know it's the right thing. And like, ugh, like that's how it felt to me to go speak to like 100 engineers. I was like, wait, what? I talk to moms and we do like woo-woo guided meditations and hypnotherapy. Like this is so opposite. But it felt like that pukey yes. And there's been so many opportunities I've taken in my life that have felt that way. Um, and then also intuition comes from like stillness. So creating more stillness in my life has helped that as
Mm.
well. Just knowing like, how does intuition speak to me, creating that stillness
Yes.
and just following it wherever it goes, and knowing like, if I didn't get the result that I wanted, there's a reason, there's learning from that somehow. And I believe that to be
Absolutely.
true. Even when 0 people come into this program that I was like, oh, this is so good, I'm going to get 100.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always happen. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it sounds like what you're saying, and I think that's really true, isn't it? That we create that space. We literally have that mental space, or whether you're decluttering as well, physical space, mental space,
Mhm.
it just opens things up for new ideas to drop in, because the inspiration can't reach us. We can't necessarily get that download if our brain is so full and busy,
I don't
you
think we
know?
can. I think it
No.
only comes from when we're doing other things. Like it is the nature walks, it's the quiet
Yeah.
showers, it's the little moments that are still, that those ideas and that inspiration comes and you're like, okay, no, wait,
Totally.
that's what I need to do. But also it's really hard to believe in it still if you get a like zero registration program thing, when you're like, wait a second, this
Yeah.
intuition thing is bunk. Like, let's go back to
Right.
numbers and masculine energy again. Um,
Right. Yeah,
so
yeah.
it
And
is,
I think
it's
that reminds me
definitely
of
not all
the
rainbows and daisies.
oh, what? Sorry, is that
I said it's definitely not all rainbows and daisies to go from here to here. It's
no.
like so much up and down.
So much up and down. I think that kind of alludes to the whole path of, like, we don't necessarily know the end result. Like, our human
Mhm.
brain can kind of compute to a certain level, and from where we're at right now with our program beliefs and all of that, we think this is what we want. We think this is what's possible. We might be projecting as well what others have taught us that we should be doing. So it may not be aligned with our values, and that's what our goal is. And so we take these steps, and it's usually in those steps that we realize, actually, there's something else, and then there's this. But if you didn't take that step, you never would have known that. So it's like putting
Yeah,
all those pieces together, and then you get to the other side and you might realize, oh, this is where I was meant to go all along. It wasn't even that thing. Right.
totally.
Yeah.
And that's how I even got into parenting coaching, because I was just like, I'm not coaching on parenting. Like that is not my realm. And I
Mhm.
tried coaching on all these other things and kept coming back to that until eventually I was like, this really is it. Like this is it for
Yeah.
me. And at that time, I
Yeah.
was actually making more money business coaching than I was parenting coaching. And I had
Mm.
these two kind of areas of focus, or niches, we call them, that I was like following along with. And I was like, I just knew I needed to give up all the business thing. Like I needed to like stop doing courses. I needed to tell my clients I was finishing up with them, and I needed to go all in on this other thing that I was making less money doing. And
Mm.
that was a hard decision to make too, because I was like, wait a second, what is my role here? But it just feels like my mission in life. Like it just felt like, like that home, like that purpose,
Yes.
like that alignment. And I was like, I have no idea where this is going to lead me. Maybe I will not be a millionaire, even though I want to be, but I will be
Definitely.
healing the world in the way that feels right to me.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, final question that I have for you, because this is something that I hear people struggle with a lot, is around intuition. And there's often a lack of focus, a lack of trust, within themselves. So, if
Mhm.
someone is not yet proficient in reading the different, energies and responses in their body, or really, really trusting their feelings and being guided by that, what would you say to someone in that position if they want to start experimenting with the path that you've taken?
So there's three things. One is taking time for stillness. So
Mm,
you take time for stillness, time where everything is just quiet and you're by yourself on a walk or in the car where there's literally no information, no input coming in at all. Um, I think it is a combination of stillness and self-trust. I think that's like the ingredients in the recipe of intuition. So stillness has to come first. Then the second one would be self-trust. And so we have to trust ourselves. And I think that goes back to all the work that I do, which is our self-concept, right? Like, why don't I trust myself? Why have I outsourced my personal authority to somebody else? Because I totally did this. Like, I would tell people, like, I don't know what I like to wear. I don't know what I like to eat. I don't know the answer to this question. Like, let me go, like, phone a friend, call an expert. Like, I'm sure they know,
mm,
even in parenting, right? So part of it is becoming our own life expert. And that is a process. That's like a muscle that we're going to build. That's
yeah.
choosing to intentionally trust myself, even though I don't know the outcome. A lot of that is being okay with shame and learning how to process shame, dropping perfectionism. I say, like, do it messy. Like, do it messy
Mm,
is the key to intuition. To be like, I have no idea how this
mm,
is going to turn out. I don't know if it's going to be the best thing. Um, and then the third would be to notice how it feels in your body, because everybody has access to intuition, and everyone. I've never spoken to somebody who's like, I never have felt this. So this is how I ask them.
yeah.
Think of a time when something was a yes for you, where you knew. Was it when you met your partner, or when you decided to go to school, or when you decided to quit school, or a job? Like, there's something in your life that you've had an experience with that was a yes, that it resonated within your soul and you just knew. And then, like, close your eyes, pause for a second. Like, what did that feel like in your body? For me, it
Mm,
feels like it's like a lifting up, an expanding, like free, like an opening feeling. Then you do
mm,
the same thing with a no. Like, when in the past has something really felt like it was a no for you? And we've had lots of no's, right? Like, nope, do not be friends with that person. Do not call them back. Do not apply for that job.
mm,
Um, so same thing, go into your body. Like, what does a no feel like? And for me, it feels like my shoulders literally feel like they're like getting pushed down. My whole body feels like it's getting like pushed towards the ground and like squeezed also at the same time.
mm,
And
mhm.
I can literally, even thinking about it now, feel how it feels in my body.
Yeah, yeah.
And knowing those two things can help direct me to be like, okay, wait, what does this one feel like? What does this one feel like? What do I feel like it is? And then allowing myself to do it messy and to be wrong, because that's the reason we don't want to follow our intuition, because we're like, well, what if I'm wrong? Well, you
Yeah.
probably will be. That's okay. Like,
Yeah.
just try it anyways.
Exactly, exactly. That is super, super helpful. So, stillness, trusting in yourself and doing it messy, and then noticing those feelings in your body and asking yourself to go back to a time. When did you
Yeah.
feel a strong yes? When did you feel a strong no? And using that as your guiding principle.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
pretty much my 90-minute intuition course in like 3 minutes. Just do those
Yeah,
things.
yeah. Oh, it's been so amazing talking to you tonight. Like, I think, what you've really highlighted is, yes, we do want to manifest the money, but it's all the the things that come with that. And that's often what I'm teaching on. Yeah, you want to manifest the money, but what else is in there to get that really rich picture? And you've actually just, demonstrated what it is like to be guided by actually creating that joy and creating that space and letting the money come to just support that dream. So it's
Yeah.
been fantastic to hear your
And now
story
I'm
around that.
working in the money realm because I don't think I had really
Yeah.
uncovered my own money beliefs, like those
Yeah.
childhood, what's been passed down to me type beliefs.
Yeah.
And so I do feel like I've been manifesting this life and I have the life that I've been manifesting. And now I do want more money and I do want
Yeah.
more wealth and I want it to come with ease and simplicity. And I know that that means manifestation
Yeah.
and money mindset work. And so that's been my current work right now is like, okay, what's happening here that's like keeping me in the same space. So
Amazing. Amazing.
yeah.
It's a constant journey, right? It's a constant journey.
Mhm.
We're always evolving. So if anyone's curious about your work and where to find you, where can they learn more about
When they hang
you?
out. Yeah, so I really do help people with relationships of any kind, including your relationship with yourself, which is the most important relationship. I do women's retreats right now. We'll see what happens when I'm traveling the world for a year. But right now I do women's retreats and I have a podcast called the Parenting Coach Podcast. You can check it out right below the screen. And I'm on Instagram at the.parenting.coach.
Great.
Social media is something that I've been trying to figure out also when it comes to like intuition and manifestation because I noticed that it really sucks out my energy when I spend a lot of
Mm.
time there. And so I'm not currently on there right now. My assistant is. And I am kind of working out that balance too. So anyways, those are the
That's
ways you can hang out with me, and coachcrystal.ca/blog will just take you to my podcast page and it has the links to all the different places you can listen, Apple, Spotify, all the things.
fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your time. It's been a
No.
fascinating chat. Really, really loved hearing your story. And yeah, I look forward to hearing about your next chapter with your wealth. I mean, maybe you want to come back at some point when you've learned a little bit more about money and share about your next chapter.
Yeah, I would love to come back in a year once I figured this out
Yeah,
because I'm again revamping the way that I'm doing my business and in a way that's going to take less time from me and hopefully more wealth. So we'll see
beautiful.
where we are in a year.
Fantastic. Oh, I look forward to that conversation.
Thanks,
All
Carrie.
right. Thanks so much.